Not all trash is garbage. Recycling turns trash into products, jobs, and energy. I'm Howard Latofsky, and on the 1993 USA Trash Tour, we're going to show you some of the best recycling facilities in the United States. We're walking toward the tipping floor, is that right?
You will be advancing to the bonus round, Howard. When we add it to the Avis & Co. composting digester, if we have 12 tons of garbage, we need 6 wet tons of dewatered sludge. That is our carbon to nitrogen ratio. This combination sludge and trash, which is now beginning to break down, the heat is beginning to rise because of the bacterial activity. At the end of the 3rd day, the material is moved onto a series of conveyor belts, and then it is screened off. For every 12 tons that goes through, 3 tons is made up of aluminum, ferrous metals, hard plastics, and film plastic, all recyclable. This is last week's trash. 15 Packer trucks and all of the sludge from the wastewater treatment plant, Monday through Friday. This compost has moved its way through the entire process, roughly 50 days on the aerated header floor, being turned and the moisture content being constantly watched along with the temperature. It was then taken through the final trommel screen where it was reduced to less than 1/4 inch. And this is what we get. This is an Arizona Class 1 compost that we sell for $6 a cubic yard to a local guy. He makes potting soil and mulch out of wood byproducts. But he has always had to add his nutrients artificially until he got his hands on this. And since there's about 1.5% of nitrogen, about 0.8% of phosphorus, and about 0.5% of potassium, he had all of the nutrients that he needed. And he mixes this on a 1-to-1 basis with his product, bags it and sells it. But for right now, he buys this from us for $6 a cubic yard.
This facility is a refuse-derived fuel processing center. John Boquist, general manager of the facility, or
Vice President GM.
How much did this facility cost to build?
Back in 85, 86, it was around 18 million.
Okay, and that's for how many tons of processing per day?
We're licensed for 470 tons of MSW per day.
What percentage of the waste stream do you actually effectively pull out through this facility?
Actually, right at this point in time, we are pulling out about 5% of recyclables. Well, if you add in the 40% of RDF, then you got 45% of pelletized fuel.
So how much is actually landfilled?
At the present time, about 19%. It's actually going directly from here to the landfill, and that's what we call our fines. If we had a compost site, called a heavy fraction, which is that 25 to 30% fraction that goes to the burn plant, that also would be ground up and put in the compost. So you'd be pushing 100% out of this place.
Is this a profitable facility?
Operational, we are profitable. And we have around approximately about 11% operating profit.
So is there much maintenance on the system itself?
It's a highly maintenance. Anytime you have paper and conveyors and abrasive material, it's highly maintenance. Maintenance is around $4 per ton of our input. Of course, labor is up there. Your labor is, $10, $11 per ton. But our end product is an RDF fuel pellet, which boiler people burn to generate electricity. And of course, our material is clean, so it replaces high sulfur coal.
You said that this facility was built on a budget.
A budget between the 5 counties. They had a set amount of money they could spend.
And how much did it cost to build the whole facility?
This plant was $11,200,000.
How many tons a day go through this facility?
We're designed to process 250 tons in 8 hours, and our operating fee is $990,000 a year. We do not own the facility. We're on a contract to operate. We work on a set fee from the commission. The commission has a tipping fee, and that's $88 a ton.
Who gets the revenue from the recyclables?
The commission. There again, that's something that DNECO is willing to negotiate. They're in the middle of working out a deal with an RDF plant Their residue, which they put in the landfill, is food waste. Our residue, which we put in the landfill, is plastics.
And plastics can be turned into pellets?
Plastics can be turned into RDF very easily.
Great.
And food waste we can use for the composting. So we're looking at a pound for pound swap of our residue for their residue, so we stop putting things in the landfill. We cover cardboard on this end.
So this is strictly cardboard and the two types of plastic.
Simply because of the market. We can pull newspaper out in here. We can pull virtually anything out. We're set up to cover everything. It just has no markets for most of it, so we pull out just what we have markets for.
Okay. So you compost newspaper?
Yes.
And all other papers for that matter?
Correct. When you're composting, you want three things. You want moisture, which we add in our mixer and our wet separator. You want oxygen, which we're adding by pushing air into the system or pumping air out of the system. And you want heat. We add the first two, the microorganisms that are alive and everything that we touch, see, and feel go to work, and they create the heat. We recover between 45 and 50% of the waste stream to turn into compost.
How much gets landfill total?
About 32%.
Okay.
And if we can work out something with an RDF facility, we'll go down to maybe 5%.
250 tons a day come through the facility. The composter is permitted for 60 tons per day of refuse, and then 135 tons a day must go to the refuse-derived fuel facility. Currently at the facility, we're not doing any materials recovery on the front end. The tipping fee runs right around $90 a ton for mixed MSW. Recyclables, you get a break on recyclables, and there's also a lesser tipping fee of around $25 a ton for source segregated yard waste materials. We also operate as a drop-off point, a transfer point for the City of St. Cloud's curbside recycling program. PET and HDPE plastics go from here to a processing facility across town where they'll be reground and molded into new products.
The compostables is then going to be transferred how to where?
Comes out through the screen, transfers via these conveyors along here. Into the Royer trench system for the trench composter. The biofilter for this process building works pretty well. As you'll attest, the odors inside the building are significantly more concentrated than what you're smelling out here.
Oh yeah.
For final screening, market screening, we're bringing out of the back end of the Royer trench system. We're bringing from there through a destoning device, which fluidizes the compost on a bed of air, and the compost gets separated from the glass and the rocks at that point. This gives you an idea of what it takes out. That's the kind of stuff that comes out from the destoner. And then the compost heads the other direction.
Looks like it would make a wonderful dessert topping.
Oh, absolutely. It's this product right here, and this will go out at $10 a yard for nurseries, highway right-of-way projects, and things like that.
Okay, so that's clean. It has no glass in it to speak of.
Minimal glass, yeah, minimal glass. Yeah, the inert content assays on glass are less than 1% by weight. So it's very clean.
How many tons a day do you do here?
200 tons a day. This is all source-separated material. It's not mixed in with garbage. The garbage is landfills.
So you're not making any attempt to compost?
Not right now. Not right now in Rhode Island. There's a lot of yard waste composting at the local level, but not a big effort to recycle, to compost waste and organics and things like that. We're an intermediate processing, step in the recycling loop. We do two things. We separate the material, and then we package it. We compress it so that we can load it onto trucks and cost effectively ship it to the markets, who ultimately use it to make new goods. So we don't make anything here besides bales of plastic, tin, aluminum, newspaper, and crushed glass. Those are our products, and they're all sold to be reused in making new products.
Is there a tipping fee here in Rhode Island?
There's no charge for the recyclables for the towns. The tipping fee for waste is, I think it's around $16 a ton for towns and around $37 a ton for businesses.
Does this pay for the facility then? Or the sale of the products pays for it?
The sale of the products almost covers the cost of operating the plant, but it doesn't cover depreciation of equipment, collection of materials, but it just about covers operating expenses. My company is a private company. We're paid a service fee by the state to operate and maintain the facility and market the materials. We split the revenues with the state for marketing the materials.
We're flying over the Bighorn Mountains, Wyoming, unspoiled landscape. I'm sure there's lots of people out there who would see these and say, what a spot for a landfill. Maybe we don't want those people to see this place.
We operate this site as a residential drop-off. Residents in the county are assessed a user's fee on an annual basis. It's a special assessment for solid waste disposal. We've just recently implemented that, and what it did is we operate the main landfill here, and then we also operate 5 transfer sites around the county where we take all the same materials that we accept here at the main landfill facility. That being recyclables, Class 1 wastes, Class 3 wastes, all the special wastes.
So do you have a tipping fee here at the landfill?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, $50 a ton. There's no charge for recyclables.
But they don't pay you for the recycle. You don't pay them for the recyclables either.
No, I don't pay them for the recyclables.
Oh. And are you able to actually make some money for the county with this recycling
Well,
station?
I mean, I do sell everything that comes through here.
Really?
I sell used tire casings. I sell scrap metals. I sell, the standard fare of materials from the MRF. We go after, any and all non-ferrous metals that our operators can identify as salvageable material, and it looks like overall the recycling program this year will break even. Composting is also under my direction, and we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of about 7,000 tons of compost this year. Right now, we're only permitted to handle vegetative wastes. We're preparing a program to take back to the Florida state regulators to allow us to co-compost
sewage sludge,
cow manure. Florida's the largest cattle state in the country.
Oh, really?
Yes, sir.
The Ocean Arcs International Aquatic Wastewater Purification Research Project in Providence, Rhode Island. It's about a 150-foot long greenhouse. There's basically 2 rooms in here filled with a bunch of tanks covered with plants. And what's going on here, Scott?
Well, we're bringing raw sewage into the building from our neighbor next door. So the idea is to take the raw sewage with the byproducts of our lifestyle and our metabolisms, and digest them, break them down, solubilize them into the water column, and then sequester them into the tissues of plants and animals. The fish are throughout. We're playing with carp now, basically because bait fish and such don't really command a lot from the industry. What comes in is a partially digested or undigested protein or carbohydrate, ends up as a protein or carbohydrate in either a plant or an animal. So we're closing the loop. It's both wastewater treatment as well as, you could call it, recycling.
Does the plant life take up the heavy metals? Does it disperse the heavy metals?
Well, yes, the plant life takes up the heavy metals. We're looking at literally biological filters to filter out heavy metals from process waste.
So this is absolute raw sewage coming in here.
It receives what's called preliminary treatment, which is the screening,
right,
and the degrading process, getting rid of the sand.
Right.
That
Other than that, it's
the real McCoy.
Yeah.
In the front stage, we're basically driving the biochemical reactions in an oxidative pathway. So we're adding oxygens. We're taking carbon, we're adding oxygen to it, off-gassing it as carbon dioxide. We're taking the ammonia, oxidizing it to nitrate, so it could be off-gassed as nitrogen gas in these facultative wetlands here. These are facultative marshes or wet-dry marshes. The gravel matrices that we have here provides us with millions of square foot of surface area, so that as the water flows through and the particulate solids that are associated with it adhere to the outside surface of the scum layer and then be utilized by the organisms that are there. That's pretty nice for sewage. We've oxidized the nitrogen to a nitrate, The phosphorus is now in an oxidized form, in an ortho form, so it's completely soluble for the plant. So we're not using any fertilizers here. We're not using any amendments per se, but we're getting a huge productivity. At this stage, where the water that I just showed you, if we ran that through an ultraviolet sterilization unit, where basically we'd knock out the fecal coliform, you could then grow food crops. This is actually mint here. We're growing edible plants, not necessarily eating them, but looking at how they grow and survive in the system. Could wastewater systems up in Maine grow the seedling trees to replant in the forests? Could the wastewater systems down in Brazil and South America grow the trees that need, and the plants and the trees that need to restore the rainforest? We could grow maybe even medicinal herbs. I mean, we'd love to get a hold of the Western yew, see if we could grow the cancer drug.
How much did it cost to put this together?
Around $300,000. This system right here serves a community about the size of 150 to 200 homes.
This water that's coming out here of these pipes, this is at the end of the stream.
Yep.
Is this drinkable?
Discharge standards for wastewater is 200. We average around 4 or 5. Now when I say those numbers, those are colonies of fecal coliform per 100 milliliters of water.
400 or 500 or 4 or 5?
4 or 5.
Oh, so that's well below.
Well below. Drinking water has to be 0 or 1 or less than 1 or below a detectable limit of the test. So I wouldn't really call it drinking water. Issues of viruses, since we don't use any disinfection at all. There's still some bacteria in it. It's not, but it's pretty clean. not what it was 4 days ago.
So get your reservations in early, because seats are going fast, and it's going to be standing room only for the 1994 USA Trash Tour. Murphin, USA.